Welcome to Gleaning and Gathering. I'm your host, Eric Heimlich, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about being an emotionally healthy leader. I've been reading the book by that title, and it's been helpful. Painful at times, but also helpful. You know, I've met a lot of leaders. I've been in relationship with a lot of leaders, had an upfront seat sometimes in leaders with unguarded moments and seeing not just what's on the stage, but what's behind the scenes. There have been many of those that I have been wonderfully blessed by, and I'm thankful for it. I got to ride down the road with a friend and mentor and hero, Brother V.O. Egan, who was a pastor and a leader of leaders for well over 50 years. And the opportunity that I had to be with him in a vehicle, riding down the road, asking him questions, not just seeing him on the stage or listening to him preach, but to actually be with him was a huge gift. And he was someone who shaped my life and left an impression on me. I'm thankful for many others along the way that have been a mentor to me, have been a help to me in a variety of different ways. But, you know, there are other leaders that I've been in relationship with that the story is not exactly the same. And the thing that I've come away from sometimes there is that I really do want my life and my message to match. I want to give my family and my team the gift of an emotionally healthy me. I don't really think sometimes it's a matter of spirituality, and I think sometimes people try to make it that. But I think there are some leaders who are just emotionally unhealthy. And it's not a matter that they don't love Jesus, but they're not in a good place. And as a result of it, they're not bringing their best to their team and to their family because they don't have it to give. And I know because I've been one of those. I've not always been emotionally healthy. There have been times where I have not been emotionally engaged for my wife and family. There have been times where I wanted to be dependable, but knowing that if I committed to something, I needed to see it through, and yet I didn't have the horses to make it happen. There have been a lot of times where I wanted to be joyful. I wanted to be there in an emotionally healthy place and state, but I wasn't. And so for me, it's been a journey, and too often in the past, I've longed for my situation emotionally to be different than it is. And too often, my unsustainable pace of life has led me to trying to cope and to compensate in ways that are not healthy or helpful for me, for my family, for my team. And I've asked God to forgive me for that and to help me to trust Him, to be the one who does control my life and to teach me the things that I need to learn so that I don't get myself into spots where I'm out of gas, sitting by the side of the road with a flat tire, whatever analogy you want to use. But getting into a place where I'm not emotionally healthy. I was listening to a podcast this past week by Kerry Nyhoff, and his guest was talking about this idea of being emotionally healthy. And he said, the greatest gift that you can give your family or your team is the gift of an emotionally healthy you. I've been thinking a lot about that. This past Friday, I had an opportunity to be able to take a day and devote it to prayer and to reflection. And I thank God for that. I thank God that I had that kind of space in my life. And I realize that there are lots of people who don't. But I took a day to just completely focus my mind and my heart on God. And I thanked Him that day that I wasn't starving, that my family was not homeless and destitute, that I had so much to be grateful for, so much to thank God for. But during that day, there were some things that God spoke to me about as I was reflecting on His Word and spending time with Him. And one of those things was that too many times I have not fully trusted Him. I would love to use the language of trust, and I do often. But to really completely, totally depend upon Him, it reminds me of the story, the man that was carrying a pack along the trail, and there was a man coming by with a wagon, and he stopped and he asked him if he'd like to ride, and the man hopped up onto the wagon, and sitting on the bench next to him, still with the pack on his back, he turned to him finally and said, Would you like to put your pack down? And he said, Oh no, it would be too much to ask you to carry me and my pack. And I feel like that many times that's the way I've come to God emotionally. I've got to figure this out. I've got to make this happen. And it would be too much for you, God, to handle all of this. I'll need to keep carrying this pack, when in reality, God is already carrying it. I mean, there are so many things in my life that I have absolutely no control over. So many things. In fact, very little of what I call my life is really mine. There's so much of it that is dependent upon forces that are outside of my control. And I'm talking about things so basic as, breathing, or all the autonomic functions that happen in my body just automatically that I don't even think about, I don't know about, and yet they're happening. Because God designed processes and allows this world to continue to function in the way that it does, and my body to function in the way that it does, that I'm staying alive, and that I'm able to have coherent thoughts, and I'm able to have a conversation like this with you. It's amazing. And completely and totally outside of my control. So much of my life is not mine. And yet, how many times do I feel like that if I don't make it happen, it's not going to happen? And I think that many times as leaders, I'm just going to speak for me. Many times I have gotten into that place where I had that God complex, where I felt like that somehow, if it was going to happen, I was going to have to be the one to make it happen. When in reality, there is a God, and it's not me. And He is making it happen. And so as I was reflecting there on Psalms chapter 4, God just blessed me with the truth of that, and recognizing that I can lay down and sleep because God is the one who keeps me secure and safe. I can really rest in Him. And how many times does the enemy use all kinds of fear and doubt to get us emotionally and physically so exhausted that when the real work does come, we don't have the energy for it. When in reality, God is the one who holds us in this life. And He is the one who can continue to provide what is needed. What did Jesus say in Matthew chapter 6? Consider the lilies of the field. Consider the birds of the air. Are you not of much more value than many sparrows? I clothe the grass of the field. I take care of it. And will I not take care of you, O ye of little faith? And I felt like that's where God was bringing me, to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and to trust that all these other things will be added to me, that he really is in control, that he really is someone who can be trusted, and that he's not going to eat my lunch. And I think the story of the little boy that they brought him and his lunch to Jesus, and the attitude many times of us when we come to God with what we have is, he's going to eat my lunch. Jesus is going to take this lunch, the only lunch I have, and he's going to eat it, and I'm not going to have it. When in reality, what Jesus was about to do was so much bigger than what that little boy could even begin to understand at that moment. And yet, he got to be part of it. What is our view of God? What is our view of him? Is he someone who can be trusted, really trusted? Like, we can give it to him and he's going to do the absolute best with it, far beyond anything that we could have ever hoped to have done with it. And it will be good, infinitely better. Or do we think that he is going to eat our lunch? I think it's tied to this idea of being an emotionally healthy leader, because I think that gratefulness and a sense that God is ultimately in control goes together with this idea of being emotionally healthy and whole. If you feel like you have to constantly hold onto the wheel, white knuckling it, then you're never going to really Sabbath. You're never really going to take time to pray and to play and to trust that God is going to take care of the things that need to be taken care of. You're just not going to, because it's dependent upon you. You got to make it happen. And to be healthy emotionally means that you're putting the big rocks in on a daily basis, and doing the things that are important, but they're not urgent, like taking care of your family and being emotionally present in the relationships that you're in. I don't know about you, but I've got plenty of room to grow in this area. I don't want to say I've learned this lesson, I figured it out, and now I can move on. But I do think that God is teaching me some things. And to have the gift of silence and reflection, to have a time where I am spending writing out the things that I'm grateful for and reflecting on those on an ongoing basis. I realize more and more as I do those sorts of things that I am shaped by what I repeatedly do. My friend David Harkoff last week at the band concert there at the Garen Wolf String and Wind Fine Arts Camp shared that thought, that we are shaped by what we repeatedly do. You can see it in these students at every level that some of them had just picked up the instrument for the first time on Monday morning, and now here they are playing a song on Saturday on this instrument. And then the cadet band that, they're, as Lucas Ryder said, they know enough about this instrument just to be dangerous. And then there's the intermediate band, and they did a phenomenal job, and it was great to hear them, and then to hear the advanced band students that had been practicing and practicing hundreds and hundreds, perhaps thousands of hours, and developing those skills on that instrument and that ability, and to hear them all coming together as a unit and playing those songs. It was amazing. It was amazing to hear, but recognizing that it was also amazing to see what was happening in that whole process, that they were being shaped. Each one of those students was being shaped by what they were repeatedly doing. And I think there's an important lesson to be learned there in our spiritual life. Are you putting the big rocks in first? I want to ask you that, honestly. Are you in the space that you are leading in right now? Are you emotionally healthy? Are you living a joyful, grateful life? And are you giving the gift of an emotionally healthy you to your team and to your family? Or would you have to say too many times you're running on fumes? You're showing up at the last minute. You're phoning it in. You're doing the minimum. And you know it. And everyone else around you knows it. And instead of really being in a place where you are well and where out of that health and wellness you are blessing others, too many times you're not showing up in that condition. And as a result, other people are paying the cost. They are having to deal with an unhealthy you. We've all seen it. We know what that looks like. But looking in the mirror, what does it look like? And do you have people in your life who care enough about you, who will help you to see when you need to take a step back and when you need to do some things that are different so that you can be in a healthier place? You see, the reality is that we have control of our schedule. We have control of the use of our time. We all do. And I think that many times we get into this place where we get tunnel vision and think, whatever I'm doing right now, that is what I have to do. When the reality is, you don't have to do anything. We choose to do it. And those choices take us places. They have consequences. And so I just want to challenge you to think about this. What are you doing to become a more emotionally healthy leader? What are you doing? And by the way, if you haven't read Pete Scazzaro's book, I would highly recommend it. I believe one of the greatest gifts that we can give is the gift of an emotionally healthy you. And so that's what I'm chewing on today. Would love to hear what you think about it. And for Gleaning and Gathering, God bless.